It truly is. You don't know what you don't know. And I have found that as somebody gets more experience, you start realizing how much you don't know. So I'm almost saying like it takes experience in order for you to become knowledgeable about how unknowledgeable you are. So it's you see what I'm saying? It almost
I know exactly what you're saying.
You think you're up here when you first start. And as you get experience, you realize that, but you're gaining experience, but you're realizing that you really don't know what you thought you should have known or did know. Hey, good afternoon, Todd. How you doing?
Good afternoon, Joe. I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I got a new laptop, so I've been playing and trying to figure that out, and to no avail. I am definitely old and do not know how that stuff works. It's all black magic voodoo stuff, and I'm really struggling with it, but I'm getting there. I'm slowly mastering.
Is there a neighbor? Is there a child you could call to come over?
Yeah, I mean, know.
Anyone between the ages of 7 and 30 is going to know a hell of a lot more than I would about computers.
Than we do? Yeah. I know. Yeah. This is where having kids would probably benefit the one time.
Right.
What's our situation today?
I think we were picking up on where we left off last time. So we were doing kind of a flooring 101 last time and went through some LVP and some hardwood and just a couple different options. And by the time we started talking about tile, we figured that was a much longer conversation and probably required its own episode, since that was tile itself and large format versus small tiles versus underlayments versus thin sets and anti-crack membranes and decoupling membranes and in-floor heats and proper substrates, waterproofing. Like, my God, what do you want to talk about? My gosh, all of it.
It doesn't stop.
No.
We can spend forever on this. I don't think we want to spend forever on it. So let's pick up on a couple things.
This was a 101, right? This was supposed to be a 101. Yeah. 101. So this was getting down a lot of the basics. And if by popular request people want a 102, I'm sure we can go that route.
Right. Okay. Well, let's first start with like prep. Good prep work, like anything else. The more prep you do, the better the end result's going to be, right?
Sure.
So
I would agree with that.
Yeah. So Schluter-Ditra is kind of our main go-to. We're going to use Schluter-Ditra under all tile, every tile, no matter what the substrate is.
Regardless of the substrate?
Regardless of the substrate.
Okay.
So concrete, wood subfloor, doesn't matter. We're going to use Ditra.
Okay.
We want that uncoupling membrane that you mentioned earlier. Yeah. So we're going to use that no matter what. Okay. It's kind of like our like, we don't even give homeowners a choice. We're going to use that. This is the best practices. And I would suggest everybody should be using that. I don't know. Do you guys use that?
Do we lose? Lost you for a second.
I did lose you for a second, but you're back on.
Okay, so I'm not an early adopter, right? So when Schluter-Ditra came out, or all Schluter products for that matter, at least I shouldn't say when it came out. It may have been around long before I knew about it or before it was here. I think they were using it in Europe for quite a while before it hit the States. I could be wrong, but so previous to that, we were using typical Duroc underlayment or some sort of cement board underlayment, and sometimes there was an anti-crack membrane that was instituted for that. That seemed to work well in most instances, but as I saw Schluter becoming more and more popular, I let some other people try that out on some projects, made sure it kind of stood the test of time and people weren't having any issues and any callbacks, and the company itself wasn't going anywhere. And once it seemed pretty well established, we adopted it, tried it on a few projects, and have had zero callbacks on that product. So I agree as far as using that on any floor, I'm doing the same thing. It's just not, like you said, it's a no-brainer. It's just, yep, this is what we're doing. Easy to cut and install. You can tile on top of it that day if you want to, after you lay it, if you have the time. There's just endless benefits to that, Lightweight and easy to transport as opposed to carrying sheets of some sort of underlayment. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say the problem that we were having with it was because it comes in a roll that, and this is early. I know it comes in, you can buy it in a sheet now, so it lays flat. But back in the day, it was coming in a roll, and which we still buy it in a roll. But the issues is at the corners, at the ends, it'll curl up on you sometimes. It's a bit of a pain in the butt. So we used to go around and weigh it down all the way around the perimeter with whatever bags of thin set or pieces of tile, and just let it sit overnight or something. Yeah. That's the only kind of pain in the butt of it all, I would say. It's got that because it's, I don't know if it's truly like a plastic, so it holds that, it remembers that shape a little bit. So kind of tough on that.
If that's the only drawback, I'd say it's doing pretty well.
Yeah, right. You did bring one thing up though. You mentioned 0 callbacks, and I have to say the same. Once we started using that, it was a no-brainer. The very first project I used it on, I can remember the floor, the subfloor, it was on slab. The house was on a slab. And so we were doing a floor in a bathroom. Man, this is many years ago. And it had this giant crack down the center of the bathroom in the floor. And it even was it was even like 2 different heights a little bit.
Yeah.
And evidently the homeowner has had somebody come and retile that floor twice in a year, and still it was getting, like, the tile was cracking. I went in there and looked at it when she called us to come and look at it. I immediately was put off by the project, and I wasn't even sure that I even wanted to take it, because that was back when I didn't even know what I didn't know at the time. And a buddy of mine had mentioned, I believe that there's like some kind of underlayment that you should put down under your tile. And I immediately was like, what? This is like a concrete floor. Why would you put anything underneath it? So that's what I did in my head, because I was young and dumb and I knew everything. And and I went home and researched, and I found the Ditra product, and it was like, I just went down that rabbit hole and I learned so much about it. And I was like, I can't believe I'm not doing all my projects with this. And so I called the client and I said, look, I think this is what's going on. I'm willing to take on the project. I have this, let's try this product out. And, I was really upfront about it. And she thought this was great because no one's ever brought anything new to this problem. So let's figure it out. And so we did, to this day, because it's a friend of mine who knows that was a friend of his. And to this day, that bathroom is still tiled just fine. And so,
and that's a huge issue. You have a concrete slab
that was a huge issue.
God only knows the extent of why that slab is moving and how much that's moving. Yeah, so that's a
it worked out really well. Yeah.
But it's funny you say that, because it's not even just the you don't know what you don't know. A lot of that sometimes is just like the unwillingness to change of guys that have been doing this for so long. So I had an old school tile setter who was a union tile setter for 20 plus years. And when I showed him that product, he was just like, why are you using this? What is this? Is it plastic? And I said, yeah, you can put it right over a concrete slab. And he said, why would you ever put anything over a concrete slab? Concrete slab is the best possible substrate you could have for tile.
Yeah,
and
totally
I said,
not true.
Well, what if the slab moves? And he goes, what do you mean, what if the slab moves? I'm like, well, the slab could potentially move a little bit. This has a decoupling feature to it, so it kind of is supposed to help facilitate that little bit of movement so that you don't get cracking tile and cracking grout joints. We've all seen hairline cracks through grout joints. And he said he just didn't even want to hear it. I'm going to put down plastic and put tile on top of plastic. No way. Not having it. Not having it. So
Right.
it's just funny, the unwillingness to change,
Yeah, totally. Totally. Right. It's a shame. I wanted to elaborate a little bit when we were talking about, and you had mentioned that you don't know what you don't know. And I know we've said that many times before, but something popped in my head that I wanted to reiterate was that it truly is, you don't know what you don't know. And I have found that as somebody gets more experience, you start realizing how much you don't know. So I'm almost saying, like, it takes experience in order for you to become knowledgeable about how unknowledgeable you are. It's you see what I'm saying? It almost
I know exactly what you're saying.
You think you're up here when you first start. And as you get experience, you realize that, but you're gaining experience, but you're realizing that you really don't know what you thought you should have known or did know.
It's coming to that realization is I think only comes with age. When you're younger and you're doing this and you're in a field, and probably most fields, I would imagine, but something like this where you do this for a few years, you're gonna start puffing out your chest of, like, I can do this, I can run circles around you doing this and doing that and whatever else. But like you said, the older you get and the more you're like, holy cow, I didn't know that. I think the more open you are to just saying, you know what, then it just turns into a conversation, right? And that's whether that's with a manufacturer or someone that's in tech support or another contractor or some sort of specialized, since we're talking about tile, some sort of specialized tile installer, that's all they do day in and day out is tile installs. It's having that conversation, right? Hey, what kind of product do you use for this? What would you recommend for this? Do you use this? This came up a week ago with me. I had a client that wanted epoxy grout, and they didn't know why. They had a tile salesperson tell them, you need to use the epoxy grout. It's the best stuff. I don't use epoxy grout. I'm not an all-day, everyday tile setter, but I have used epoxy in the past, and it is extremely difficult to work with. It sets up too fast. It's too hard to clean. It's just, you're working in too small of a space. And then they even say on the instructions, like, you need to mix the full bags of components for it. It just, and you're paying 5 times the price. I'm like, why am I doing this? Why on earth would I do this? When there's some very nice grouts that there's no efflorescence from them. They're easy to mix, easy to work with, easier to clean up at least. And you can always seal on top of it.
Yeah, right. And you can continue to seal over time. Yeah, grout, epoxy grout, bad grout, bad.
Right. But they didn't know why. They just had it. That's what a salesperson told them. So they said, and it's, I had this conversation and it was just like, it's like, stay in your lane. You're selling products, but don't tell someone like, yo, you need the epoxy grout. It's a hall bathroom floor. Like, why on earth would they need epoxy grout for that? You don't. You just don't need it. It's overkill by far. You're paying 5 times the price for that. But what I don't like about that is now you have this salesperson that mentioned that. And now when I tell them, oh, no, don't use that. And they look at the price tag and it's because I was supplying the grout. And that's $100 versus the $19 grout that I was buying. Now they're questioning, well, are you just buying cheap crap and putting it in my house? You know? Yeah. So it brings up that whole. So.
Yeah, epoxy grout. Yuck. Well, we could talk more about epoxy grout and when and if we do a tile one-on-one.
Yeah.
But as far as the tile flooring, before we move on from prep work, we were talking about the Schluter-Ditra stuff. I wanted to kind of show everybody my little, there she is. That's what your Ditra, it's the orange,
pretty orange waffles,
honeycomb looking thing. Yep. Waffles. There you go. That's a better way of putting it.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Bunch of
That's what that looks
waffles.
like.
Now, let
Mm-hmm.
me ask you,
Yep.
what thin set are you using to lay that Ditra down? Let's say it's on a plywood subfloor, most common subfloor.
Oh, you're gonna go down that road, aren't you? All
Of
right.
course I am. You showed it
So,
in your picture. Think I'm going to skip over
okay.
this? There's no arrows pointing to what's what. What's that
All
gray
right.
stuff underneath the Ditra?
Okay. The gray stuff underneath the Ditra. So you have in this picture, there is just wood plywood down
Uh-huh.
as the subfloor. So if that's a subfloor, and even that could be underlayment put on top of the subfloor, regardless, it's a wood substrate.
Yep.
You're going to put underneath that Ditra, you're going to put a modified thin set. Okay. And then on top of the Ditra, you're going to use unmodified thin set.
Okay.
Now, if you want to make things much easier on yourself, then what we could do is use Schluter's all set. And that is going to look like this here.
Mm-hmm.
So Schluter makes their own thin set, which is Schluter all set, they call it. Now, back in the day, boys and girls, you were not allowed to use anything other than unmodified on top of the Ditra.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Schluter has come out and changed that and said that you can use their Schluter all set or unmodified, period. So if
Okay.
you want to be safe, and I do, and I am, I've years and years and years, we've been buying unmodified.
Uh-huh.
Man, I forgot the brand I used to use. It used to start with a B, just because it had the highest Portland cement mix in it to make it as
Okay.
strong as you could, because it's unmodified. So there isn't all these little polymers in it. That's what's the difference between the unmodified and the modified, is all these little polymers. They like little, think about little plastic rebar, or I don't know if it's plastic or if it's like fiberglass.
But just acts as a binder, right?
It acts like a binder, and I like to think about little tiny rebars in there, and that's what makes it so strong.
Mm-hmm.
The unmodified doesn't have that. And the reason why you need to use unmodified on the top of it is because your Ditra and the middle of those large tiles are not going to be able to breathe. There's no exchange of air. And
Yeah.
that's how that's how modified thin set dries, is by air.
Correct.
So it needs to breathe in order to dry. Unmodified, however, does not need that. It's a chemical thing, and it dries on its own. So the center of those big tiles will dry on their own, and that's why you're using unmodified. That's the main reason, because those center of those tiles, especially the big tiles, they will not dry. Now,
Right.
I imagine you can loophole this, and you could use modified on top if you wanted. If you were using very small tiles, 2x2s, something like that, I sure that it will dry and you'll be just fine, and you would probably end up with a stronger bond, just because it's polymer based. But then you won't get the warranty from Schluter, and I wonder why would you do that?
Sure.
So
Yeah.
So that's a little one-on-one on putting Ditra down, which kind of went off on a tangent with that. But
yeah, this wasn't supposed to be a whole episode about Ditra, but we did a good job.
No. But let's continue on the prep work, because prep work's really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of times what ends up happening, Todd, you tell me, what happens when you start scraping and getting off that set of tile that's on there? You're usually ended up with a subfloor that has all this goop maglage on it, and you're trying to like start with a smooth flat surface, right? And you have this like nastiness left over.
Sure.
So what do?
So depending on the situation, right? So I've seen a few different instances there where I actually just did a bathroom that had typical 3/4 inch subfloor. but it had a very thin, usually like 5 millimeter, like 1/4 inch underlayment that they put down and then tiled on top of that. So what we did was just pulled that whole 1/4 inch up. Just like, let's get down to the original subfloor. And by getting down to that original subfloor, it gives me a couple opportunities to do, gives me an opportunity to do a couple of things. Number one, any squeaks that are in that floor, because it's just nail driven, usually that's when you're getting those squeaks from, right? So you can go through and screw down that whole subfloor, pull any nails that are making any squeaks. So you get to alleviate any noise. And then you're starting from a nice, smooth subfloor, right? And then you can build that up however you want. If it's a different thickness of Ditra, or if depending on the size tile you're using for the floor, so what size trowel are you using for your thin set, you're figuring all that out to get to, if you're doing a bathroom, figuring out to get to your hallway. What height do you want your finish to be at, right? Are you using any sort of threshold, or you just want a smooth transition from, let's say, a hardwood floor to that tile floor? So I like to get down to a subfloor. If it is on the subfloor originally and you have all that built up, any built up stuff on there, it depends how easily it comes off. Sometimes if you're taking, a decent scraper to it, you're getting some of that up, sometimes it's okay and you can kind of go over that. If it's really, really tiny and it's bonded well, you're going to thin set down your Ditra anyway. So if there's that little bit that's bonded, as long as it's not built up 1/8 of an inch or more, then I'm fine with going right over it. So that's where I'm at with prep work for subfloor.
Yeah, there you go. That sounds good. What you also wanted to add in is usually is a good idea to think about whether you're going to self-level or not. Yeah, I would also urge you to consider the height. If you're in a bathroom, consider the height of your threshold, because you're going to try to match up with what's in the hallway. And thresholds are a big pet peeve of mine.
As in you don't like them?
I will, oh my gosh, if they don't match and they're not flush, I will rebuild the entire house to make sure a threshold is flush.
Yep, I believe it.
And I have. I've redone the entire first flooring because the thresholds at the bathrooms weren't going to match. It's ridiculous, but you just got to manage your client's expectation on whether there's going to be a bump there or not. That's all. And if they're okay with it, great. You're 2 thumbs up for you. But
yeah, buy you some leeway if they're okay with it. But then, are you okay with it? Because I don't have quite as many pet peeves as you do. I don't think I have a few, but I don't know if I have quite as many as you do. But that is one of mine also. To me, you didn't plan right. Yeah. You didn't figure out your finishes properly. You should have been able to get to a point where that transition was nice and smooth and even all the way across. Unless for some reason that bathroom floor was built up higher, and you just couldn't do it.
Yeah. Okay, but you got to give it to it's math. It's just a math problem. Yeah. Because if you have 3/4 flooring outside in the hallway and it was put right down onto subfloor, and then you're in the bathroom and you want heated floors and you want to use marble, sorry, not going to work. Not going to work. You're going to have a bump no matter what you do, because the math is going to put you way higher than the 3/4 floor outside. And it's just a math problem usually. So you just got to work it out.
Sure.
What my point that I wanted to make though was just plan ahead and consider, if you're in the bathroom, not only your threshold height, but also consider the toilet flange height. That's going to be a big problem for you. That's going to be a big problem for you. So you just want to make sure that toilet flange height is going to work for you. If it was an old house, and back in the day, a lot of these old bungalows in Chicago, they were built with like a really thick mud pan floor, right? Yep. The whole floor is an inch or 2 of just solid concrete. So that toilet flange is going to be sitting really high if you go back down to your original subfloor, which we should and would do that. So you're not going to...
Side note real quick, just don't work on a house older than 1978. Go on.
Okay.
If the house is older than
So
me, I don't want to work on it.
isn't that like 60 or 70% of the homes that are out there? So
Fine by
good
me.
luck.
Niche
Yeah.
market.
No. So good luck. But yeah, that's all things to consider. The toilet flange.
Good
Because
point on the toilet flange. Yeah.
yeah, that's always a tricky thing that pops up on you and you're like, crap, that's a lot of work. Didn't think of that one.
Right.
Now your
Calling your
toilet's
plumber,
an inch off the floor.
right, when you're calling your plumber, how difficult is it to lower the flange after I tiled the floor? Is that difficult?
Oh yeah, and just tell them that it's a 19th century house and it's it's all cast iron.
I'm sure it's just threaded.
Then tell me how easy it's going to be.
I can just turn it counterclockwise and it'll just lower. I'm sure it's all just threaded. Seals just fine.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. You just press a button somewhere. It'll fix itself. I'm sure. Yeah.
Right.
It's all good things to consider. Yeah. So that's fun. Ditra heat.
Ditra heat.
Yeah. So what's cool about Ditra heat is it's that same membrane Hold on. I got a picture. I got it right here. Talk among yourselves. Same
membrane at 3 times the cost. Just quick note.
Ditra heat. I have it right here in front of me. A little what I show clients is this stuff. So it still gives you that uncoupling membrane, but then you can put the wire right and it clips right in.
Yep, route that however you want to, and
you can route it however you want it. Yep,
follow specifications.
And you can route it any way you want. You still get the uncoupling membrane and you get heat. The difference is 1/8 of an inch, 16th of an inch, I think.
I think it might be an inch.
Yeah.
I think it might be an inch. Where'd you go?
You can tell I'm a Schluter guy. I got Schluter stuff all within arm's distance. So here's Ditra. All right. This is an older version of it back when the day, but I still have a piece of it. This is what that looks like. And then you can kind of see the difference in height with the Ditra heat.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Yeah. So
when you're talking tile thresholds, that's quite a bit.
It is, but I call this 1/8 of an inch, and then I call this 1/4 of an inch. So, you're gaining another 1/8 of an inch for your heat. But let me tell you, we've gone leaps and bounds with floor heat, right?
Sure.
This stuff, it only takes 1/4 of an inch. Are you kidding me? That's amazing, right? I mean, remember before what you would have to do is you would have to put a whole screed of concrete down and then
it was a process.
Put your hoses or wires down and then another screed of concrete over that. And then you're talking about tile. Yeah, you want to talk about adding some height. Yeah, but now we can get away with 1/4 of an inch. Awesome. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to bring up is really pay attention to your Schluter requirements, because if you are putting down any tile that's a natural stone, so if you're putting marble down or if you're putting travertine tiles down or slate tiles, anything that is of that nature, then you should be beefing the floor up. So assuming that you have 3/4 inch subfloor, you're going to need to add another 1/2 an inch piece of plywood down on top of that, or whatever underlayment you want to. And then you put your Ditra on top of that. And then you put your stone on top of that. Just because stone is not as forgiving as ceramic or porcelain is. As far as the flexion, because now we're talking about the inflection of the floor itself between the 16 on center studs you have, the weight in between those, they flex a little bit.
Is this a requirement of Ditra? If you're using a Ditra heat, and they're saying if you're using the heat, then you need to add this. If you're using a natural stone on top.
Yeah, it's not just heat. It's Ditra. It's
Ditra period.
And yeah, and matter of fact, I think it's, I don't know what the regulation is. ICS, something like that.
Yeah, ICS, I think.
I think it's their recommendation anyway. So Schluter's just following that. The point being is Schluter will not warranty that. You won't get their 10-year warranty or whatever their warranty is if you're not beefing up the floor.
Okay.
So you're going to want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and very important point, just across the board, right? Always follow the manufacturer's guidelines.
Yeah.
regardless of
Even
the
if you weren't
manufacturer.
using Ditra, even if you weren't using Schluter, you should be beefing up the floor for a natural stone. Sure.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. These guidelines are there for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah, you shouldn't just, well, this is how we did it. If you're using a new product or a new material, you should definitely do your due diligence, man. That's what they're paying you for.
Sure.
So
Ditra also offers, it's not just one heating system. I mean, they offer, you can run that off of 110 or you can run that off of 220, correct?
Yes, you can. I highly recommend 220. It is so worth the extra work that you're going to do to have to run a 220 line wherever your bathroom is. You're going to save it in energy costs over the lifetime of the product by far. Because you got to figure 220 is almost, good rule of thumb is twice as efficient. If it's going to run 6 amps on a 110, then you're going to run maybe 3 amps on a 220. And I don't know anybody that messes around with their heat on their floor. Once you set it, it's done, and then it heats for the rest of your life. It just is always nice and toasty tile on your toes. Yeah.
So you don't want the Wi-Fi enabled running off your phone when you know you're going to go to the bathroom in an hour.
Oh my goodness. We touched on this before in a previous episode. No, I have no intentions on thinking that far ahead. Not to mention the energy that it would take for you to heat, constantly having to reheat up a tile that is already cold, as opposed to maintaining. But if you were gone, that's a good point would be if you were gone, I guess. If you went on vacation for a couple weeks, there'd be no reason to keep it on. Sure. I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. But again, you would maybe just a checklist before you leave the house on a long vacation is to think of that ahead of time and not, oh, I'm in Fiji, I forgot, I'll have to just jump on my phone and turn off the floor heat. The last thing I'm thinking about when I'm sitting on vacation is whether my floor heat's turned on or not. So I'm not going to remember it anyway. So it's useless on me anyway.
Yeah.
You know?
Now I can relax. I knew there was something I forgot to do. It was the floor heat.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. I forgot about where I live and what I'm doing and everything else the minute I closed the door and I literally got into my car, backed out of my driveway, and I'm on vacation, baby.
There you go. Agreed. I don't even lock my door. I didn't, couldn't care less. Yeah. If the house isn't on fire, I'm gone.
I got nothing to steal. Have at it. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sure.
Help yourself.
Yeah. So is there anything else that you can think of?
Well, how long are we? Because we've talked about prep and underlayment, and it's been pretty Schluter centric, which is fine. We obviously both prefer that.
It has.
Yeah,
that's true. There are other floor heats out there. New Heat is one of them.
New Heat, Warmly Yours. Yep. There's a few of them, and they're fine. And then that's all just electric. There's hydronic too, but you're not doing that in a small bathroom.
That's true.
Or anything, but there is hydronic floor heat to begin with. So that's a whole other animal, I guess. But I don't know how far in we are just talking about tile in and of itself. Porcelain we touched on a little bit just due to underlayments, but porcelain versus marble versus ceramic versus travertine. Running the gamut of all of that, and then just large format tile versus tiny little penny rounds, and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if we want to touch on that, or if that's even another different episode.
I don't know. We could touch on it, I guess. It's all how much do we care? B, how much is it just it's going to be a designer making that choice or the homeowner's making that choice. Mm-hmm. It's a design aesthetic more than it usually is a function.
Sure.
But you bring up a very good point. All those have their pros and cons. Natural stone generally is not as durable as like a porcelain that is kind of naturally sealed and ready to go and pretty strong and holds up pretty good. Next to marble that is really soft, easy to scratch, dent, chip, and boy, you better seal it pretty good because don't leave
it'll
your bottle of
stain.
wine sitting on it. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll stain, it'll oxidize everything. You name it.
Yep. But
Yeah.
boy, is it beautiful. And we've done a lot of marble bathrooms and they look good. We just make sure we seal it and
Yeah,
they'll, as long as you take care of it.
very true.
Penny rounds. The project we are in design right now on, we are doing penny everywhere. The
Really?
whole bathroom. Yeah. A
I
whole
haven't seen anyone
bathroom
do penny round tiles
floor.
in probably like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, well, this
I'm not saying
is
it's outdated. I'm just saying I haven't come across it.
yeah, this house is 1890 something or 1900 something. It's really old house and it has that traditional aesthetic and very design and penny rounds is going to fit perfectly. But we're doing penny rounds all over the floor, in the shower floor, in the bathroom floor. It's a nice sized bathroom too, so this is not a small feat. And then we're making our own pattern. So it's going to be all white with like black all the way around, all the way around as a border.
Yeah,
It's going to have two borders. It's going to be two borders, one small one, one fat one. And then we're going to make little triangle like flower patterns randomly in it. It's going to do the same thing in the shower. It's going to be an absolute nightmare. Yeah.
See, I say cool because I'm not doing it. You say nightmare and go like this because you know what that entails. Yeah. So for me, it's like, I'm sure it'll look great in photographs when you're done. I'll be doing 4 other bathrooms by the time you're done laying the tile there.
Mm-hmm. But 3 weeks later, it's still gonna be like bloop, bloop,
yep, bloop. But I'm sure it'll be gorgeous. Sure it'll be gorgeous. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's gonna be interesting, but it's gonna be cool. But yeah,
very. No. And that's you had mentioned earlier. That's certainly an instance where you need a self leveler. You need a flat, perfectly flat. I'm not even saying level. I'm just saying.
Well, I'm glad you said flat
floor. Right.
In an older house, when we talk about remodeling, we are not talking about level usually. No. We're talking about flat. If we can get close to level, that's great. But we're generally talking about just getting it flat. We're not here under normal circumstances. We're not raising your house to get it back up to level. It has sunk to where it is. And as long as it's not moving, we're leaving it there. Now, we have raised houses. Quite a bit of houses sink out here in the Pacific Northwest. We have really, really bad soil out here. It's like very sandy soil. So everybody's houses are sinking and leaning a little bit. Believe it or not, the worst house I've ever been in, from one side of the house to the other side, 3 stories, 8 inches of drop.
No.
8.
No.
Yeah, I actually had a company come in and we put lasers out and they did all the tests and measures because we were prepping to raise 3/4 of the house. So we were going to basically the house was doing this. So we were going to put pile drives down, helical anchors basically, and we were going to lift it back up. So like a third of the house was going to stay where it's at, and then we were just going to try to lift the other part of the house. Now, we planned on every window breaking, none of the doors working. All of that had to be. You got to be ready in case that might end up happening. And but 8 inches was incredible. Never have I seen something that bad. And it was continuing to drop. It was an older house and it was still dropping. And the professionals had figured it was dropping 1/8 of an inch a year.
Ouch.
Yeah.
So it's not even just reinforcing that. Like you need did you get like a soil engineer out there to make sure that whatever you're reinforcing that with is going to withhold and so it doesn't continue?
These anchors, they pile drive these screws down into the ground and they keep going until they hit a certain amount of pounds, like 90 pounds per inch or something like that. I don't remember the exact number we needed,
But
but
that
they
amount
have
of
these
resistance is going to give you solid
yeah,
ground.
they have these big giant not machines. They're kind of like, think about it like a mini pile driver, basically, you know, and they put this machine on there and they pound this thing into the ground until they get that kind of resistance. And that machine is calculating the resistance every time it hits. And they just keep adding another connector. I don't know if it's a galvanized rod that they're using. They're just piling it down until they get that resistance. So once they get that resistance, then they attach it to the current foundation.
All right. It's wild.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy how
I
it's
couldn't
done.
imagine like the collateral damage of a 8-inch drop of a house. I mean, even if the whole thing's tipping, like that's got to create all kinds of issues of just cracking and things not holding up and joints opening up.
Walking around in that house was like a fun house.
Did you feel like you're gonna fall?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was blatantly obvious.
Was it like a baby just sliding across the floor?
Yeah, when you walk in, yeah. Yeah. That was kind of funny. So tile floor. Yeah. So you got to take consideration in the types of tile and the pattern and everything.
And the pattern.
So yeah.
There's a whole bunch.
I think we did a pretty good job. We touched on a little bit of everything. 101 tile flooring. If anyone has anything else they wanted to touch base on, let us know. We can dive in a little bit more. But till next time.
Happy to do a 102. Yeah. Till next time.
Yeah, for sure. Till next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.